Alina is secretly a high-ranking adventurer, but prefers to live a quiet life as a guild receptionist. One day, while working, a man named Guns, one of the elite adventurers, shows up and takes on one of the most challenging quests. It is to defeat a Hellflame dragon. This surprises everyone, as no one has managed to clear the quest yet. Alina, however, feels more annoyed than impressed that the quest is still not cleared. That night, due to the same quest, Alina is forced to work overtime. This is because the Hellflame dragon, having never been defeated, continues to attract monsters, which in turn draws adventurers rushing to take on quests. Alina is extremely frustrated, since all she wants is to go home and enjoy her evening. As she works, she suddenly reaches her breaking point and decides to take matters into her own hands. Elsewhere, in the Belfra underground ruins, Guns and his party struggle desperately against the dragon. None of their abilities have any effect on it at all. Just as they begin to lose hope and consider retreating, Alina suddenly appears, her face concealed by a hooded outfit. Furious at the dragon, she wastes no time summoning a massive hammer and slamming it down on the dragon's head, knocking it to the ground with a single powerful strike. This shocks everyone, leaving them wondering who she is. The dragon gets up and breathes fire at her, but she easily dodges it and finishes it off with the back of her hammer. Impressed by her strength, the party begins to speculate that she might be the Executioner. The Executioner is a mysterious adventurer known for appearing at undefeated dungeons and soloing them. The next day, Alina is shocked to learn that her actions have led Guns to retire. As a result, the guild launches an investigation to track down the mysterious executioner who killed the dragon, intending to force her to join Silver Sword and replace Guns. Panic sets in for Alina as she realizes that if they discover she's the executioner who operates under a fake name and has soloed bosses, she will definitely lose her comfortable job. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, Jade, the leader of Silver Sword, is doing everything he can to track down the executioner. He's amazed by her strength and wants her to join his party, but his fellow party members disagree, thinking he's becoming too obsessed with her. Elsewhere, in an alley, a man is furious that everyone keeps looking down on him. Just then, a mysterious figure approaches and asks to discuss something with him. Later, as Jade walks around town searching for the executioner, he wonders why she didn't take the relic after defeating the dragon. The relic is said to be an artifact bearing the mark of Dia, containing the skills of the ancients and capable of bestowing great strength upon its user, which is why adventurers often fight over it. He then wonders what skill she used to summon her hammer. As he thinks, he suddenly spots Alina and immediately recognizes her as the executioner. He follows her and is shocked to discover that she works as a guild receptionist, prompting him to decide to confront her about why she's hiding her true identity. Alina panics, wondering how he figured it out since her face was covered at the time. Trying to brush it off, she pretends not to know what he's talking about. However, Jade quickly shuts her down, stating that with his sharp vision and keen sense of smell, she can't hide from him. Fearing she might lose her job, Alina suggests they continue the conversation outside. Little did he know that, as soon as they were alone, Alina immediately threatened to kill him, warning him not to reveal her secret. All she wanted was to live a peaceful life. Jade then attempted to use his skills to stop her, but it was useless. Without hesitation, Alina summoned her hammer and tried to kill him. Terrified, Jade begged her to stop. His eyes shifted to her hammer, and he asked if the skill she used was a type of phantom skill, a legendary ability said to have vanished alongside the ancients, rumored to be stronger than even the highest level modern skills. Alina, uninterested in his question and focused on silencing him, simply wanted to kill him. Realizing he had no other option, Jade confessed that he was in awe of her strength and wanted her to join his party. Alina, however, refused outright, pointing out that adventurers don't have the concept of leaving work on time. Jade then wondered why she chose to fight the dragon if she didn't want to be an adventurer. Frustrated, Alina explained her reasons to him, including her hatred for working overtime, but her explanation only left Jade more confused. Annoyed, Alina began lecturing him about how valuable her time was. Before leaving, she gave Jade one final warning to stop bothering her. However, Jade silently vowed to himself that he would convince her to join his party, no matter what. Later that day, while Alina was working, a man stormed in and demanded that her friend give him a secret quest, causing her friend to freeze in fear. Alina is furious because she knows there's no such thing as a secret quest. It's all just a ridiculous rumor. She tries to explain this to the guy, but he doesn't believe her. Just as he's about to hit her, Jade arrives in time to stop him and warns him not to do it again. It turns out Jade knows the guy, whose name is Slay. After Slay leaves, Alina thanks Jade and asks why he's there. Looking nervous, Jade says he's just passing by and quickly leaves. The next day, Alina still can't believe that Jade discovered her secret. She then lies on her bed, not wanting to do anything, wishing she could stay like that forever. But then she remembers that without her job, she wouldn't have been able to get a loan for her house. Determined not to lose her job, she resolves to do whatever it takes to avoid getting fired. While Alina was enjoying her lunch, Jade approached her and asked her to join his party again. He then inquired about when her Dia skill first manifested. Alina, unwilling to answer, brushed him off and told him to leave her alone. 2 summers ago, when Alina had just started working as a receptionist, the town was celebrating its annual centenary festival. She had desperately wanted to attend, but a towering pile of work kept her at her desk. By the time she finally finished and rushed to the town, the festival was over. The streets were empty, littered with remnants of festivities. Overwhelmed with disappointment, Alina cried. She felt unworthy of the life she was living, trapped in endless paperwork, filling out reports about incompetent adventurers, failing to defeat bosses, or overdue missions piling up. The relentless overtime crushed her spirit, and she hated everything that kept her tied to her job. At that moment, Alina prayed to the gods for great power, enough to bring an end to everything holding her back. It was said that during the centenary festival, the gods listened to the deepest desires of those with the strongest will, blessing them with Dia's power. To her astonishment, her wish was granted. Alina suddenly felt a surge of power coursing through her. Later, while Jade was walking around town, wondering how to change Alina's mind, he suddenly heard an explosion nearby. Alarmed, he rushed to investigate and was shocked to find none other than Slay commanding a raid boss attempting to destroy the town. Earlier that day, a group of adventurers had successfully captured the raid boss. However, Slay saw an opportunity and used his skill to take control of it, turning the situation into chaos. Meanwhile, Alina heard the commotion outside, and when she went to check, she was horrified to see Slay destroying the town. Panicked, she rushed to check on her house, desperately hoping it was safe. However, to her shock, she found it completely destroyed. The sight filled her with fury. At the same time, Jade was struggling to fend off Slay. Just when he thought he was about to lose, Alina arrived and obliterated the raid boss with a single, devastating attack, leaving Slay terrified. Shortly after, the guildmaster, Glenn, arrived at the scene to assess the situation. He used his skill, Time Observer, to investigate the area. Elsewhere, Alina was devastated by the loss of her house. Trying to comfort her, Jade offered her a place to stay at his home for the night. Alina, however, glared at him in disgust and bluntly told him she would stay at an inn instead. After that, Alina returned to the Adventurers Guild to finish her work, with Jade gladly tagging along to help. To Alina's surprise, Jade turned out to be much better at her job than she was, which annoyed her to no end. Noticing her frustration and growing gloom, Jade tried to cheer her up by finding something sweet for her to eat. While checking his purse, he suddenly noticed some text inside the relic Alina had crushed the other day. Upon examining it, the message revealed a hidden quest: to defeat all the floor bosses in the Chalk Tower. Alina, uninterested in the quest, brushed it off and went back to her work, while Jade quietly decided to investigate it on his own. The next day, Alina was shocked to find herself in the news again. Just then, her friend, who believed the executioner was a man, came over and started gushing about how cool the executioner was for protecting the town. Apparently, her friend was a huge fan of the executioner. Alina didn't know how to respond, so she could only smile nervously. Later, while Alina was working, the guildmaster, Glenn, came to find her and told her to meet him at the guild's headquarters. He revealed that he knew she was the executioner due to his skill, which allowed him not only to stop time at the scene, but also to see into the past. Alina thought her life was over. She was sure she was going to get fired from her job. Seeing her so down, Jade tried to cheer her up, but she snapped at him, telling him to leave her alone and that she hated him. Hearing this, Jade broke down in tears. His party members felt bad for him, but didn't know how to help. They then looked at Alina, still struggling to believe that she was the executioner. Afterwards, she went to meet the guildmaster. To her surprise, instead of firing her, he wanted to challenge her to a duel, leaving her stunned. The guildmaster then offers Alina a deal. If he wins, she must join Silver Sword. However, if she wins, the guild will stay out of her way and she'll keep her job as a receptionist. Alina smirks, summons her weapon, and leaps into the air, ready to strike. In an instant, the guildmaster activates his skill, stopping everything around him. But Alina is able to shatter through it with ease. His eyes widen in shock, as he had never expected anyone to break free. Realizing he stands no chance, he lets out a heavy sigh and concedes defeat. Later, the guildmaster explains to Alina that the reason he fought her was to understand the true nature of her skill. Skills are categorized into 3 types: Regan skills, the higher-ranking Sigurd skills, and the most powerful of all, Dia skills. After their fight, he confirms that Alina indeed possesses a Dia skill. Alina, uninterested, turns to leave, but the guildmaster stops her, revealing that they need her. Apparently, Jade's investigation into a secret quest led them to discover a new dungeon called White Tower. Hearing this, Alina's expression darkens. A new dungeon means an overwhelming surge in quests, which means overtime work for her until it's cleared. Frustrated, she glares at the guildmaster. Stunned by her reasoning, he still tries to recruit her for the dungeon expedition. But Alina refuses, reminding him of the deal they made. With no other options, the guildmaster makes an offer. If she helps, he will double the number of receptionists. This catches Alina's attention. She imagines a future where, no matter how busy things get, she'll never have to work overtime again. Grinning at the thought, she happily agrees. The next day, Alina wakes up and looks around, remembering that she spent the night at the Silver Sword Inn. Just as she's about to go back to sleep, Jade arrives to pick her up for the mission. Later that day, Alina, Jade, and his party members, Lululi the healer and Lo the rear attacker, head to the dungeon. Along the way, Jade explains that only first-class adventurers are allowed to take on this quest. He then hands Alina a relic developed by the guild specifically for Silver Sword. He explains that it's a guiding crystal shard, an item all Silver Sword members carry. If the owner is on the verge of death, the crystal will send an alert to their allies. As they venture into the dungeon, Jade tells Alina to follow his lead, since she has never fought in a party before. Just then, a monster appears. Jade quickly uses his skill to distract it, creating an opening for Alina. Without hesitation, she strikes, killing it in a single blow. Everyone is stunned. Lo even starts to question whether he's needed in the party, while Lululi, amazed, showers Alina with praise. As they delve deeper, they are surprised to find that there is no floor boss on the first level. Curious, Alina learns from Lululai that the ancients who built this dungeon mysteriously vanished one day. According to legend, they became too obsessed with great power, angering the gods, who then wiped them out. However, the true reason for their disappearance remains unknown. On the second floor, as they walk, a sudden scream echoes through the dungeon. Rushing toward the sound, they come to a halt, stunned by the sight before them, a group of adventurers lying lifeless on the ground. Alina freezes, staring at the bodies. A painful memory resurfaces. Someone important to her had met the same tragic fate. While Jade scans the area, he suddenly spots a survivor and rushes over to ask what happened. The shaken adventurer points ahead, explaining that a monster suddenly appeared from that direction, a humanoid creature capable of using skills. Just then, a monster bat swoops in to attack, but Alina swiftly crushes it. Noticing her warhammer, the survivor's eyes widen in anger. Then, he asks if she is the executioner and whether she's connected to that monster. After all, he had seen that monster summon weapons from a white magic sigil, just like she did. Later, Jade returns to the Adventurers Guild headquarters and explains everything to the guild master. Together, they decide to put the dungeon expedition on hold until they can find a way to deal with the humanoid creature. A survivor named Rufus overhears their conversation and becomes furious. He then comes in and threatens Jade, demanding to join his party and have the executioner kicked out. He also insists that Jade take him to the dungeon. Otherwise, he will tell the townspeople that the executioner is actually a monster. Rufus then reveals his true motive, that he wants the relic hidden inside dungeon. Apparently, he heard from someone that a special relic rests in the dungeon's deepest chamber, one that can grant anyone a Dia skill. That night, Jade comes to Alina's room and tell her that he will be taking Rufus to the White Tower instead of her, and she can return to her receptionist job. This makes Alina suspicious and ask him about the promise to add more receptionists and eliminate her overtime, which Jade assure her that they will do their best to achieve that. Before leaving, he tells her that she can stay here until her house is fixed. Concerned, Alina asks if he will be okay. Jade looks at her and reassures her that he'll be fine. Even if they encounter the humanoid creature, they will escape immediately. He then promises her that they will return safely no matter what. Alina gets a bad feeling about this, recalling her past. As a child, she had always dreamed of becoming an invincible adventurer when she grew up. However, an adventurer named Shroud suggested she become a receptionist instead, saying it was a safer and more stable job. But Alina refused. She wanted to go on quests with him. She even made a promise that one day they would adventure together. However, that promise was never fulfilled as he was killed on the quest the next day. Later, in the dungeon, Jade grows exhausted from constantly using his skill, Sigurth Beast, which allows him to detect monsters. He has been relying on it non-stop to avoid encountering the humanoid creature at all costs. Meanwhile, Rufus smirks and tells Jade to keep going, showing no concern for his exhaustion. As they reach the final floor, they are shocked to find that the floor boss has already been slain by the humanoid creature. The figure then introduces himself as the Dark God Scylla, claiming he is neither a monster nor a human. Without warning, he summons a spear and hurls it at Jade. However, Jade quickly activates his skill, blocking the attack, much to Dark God's amusement. Realizing they stand no chance, Jade and his party attempt to escape, only to be trapped by Rufus. Confused, they demand an explanation, and Rufus reveals the truth. Apparently, the Dark God was originally sealed here, but he learned that by feeding him human souls, the seal would break. That's why Rufus killed his own companions, to resurrect the Dark God. Now, he intends for Jade and his party to be the next sacrifices, believing that once Scylla is fully revived, he will obtain a Dia skill. However, as Rufus continues speaking, the Dark God suddenly appears behind him. Before he can react, the Dark God kills him and devours his soul. To the Dark God, all who enter his sight are nothing more than prey. Meanwhile, as Alina worked, she kept glancing at her crystal shard, hoping Jade and his party were safe. Back in the dungeon, Lo tried to attack the Dark God with fire magic, but it had no effect. In response, the Dark God hurled his spear at Jade, shattering part of his shield and managing to wound him. However, Jade's injury healed instantly thanks to Lululi's regenerative skill. Noticing this, the Dark God became intrigued and used his mirror skill and successfully steal her ability and her staff. Knowing they had no chance of winning, Jade told his party to escape while he stayed behind to buy time. However, they refused to leave him. As they argued, the Dark God summoned a swarm of floating swords and launched them at Jade. Not wanting his sacrifice to be in vain, Lo quickly grabbed Lululi and fled the area. Unfortunately for them, as they made their way back, a monster suddenly appeared, blocking their path. At the same time, Alina and her friend were working overtime when her friend suddenly expressed her frustration. She couldn't understand why the guild had given up on finding the executioner, as she desperately wanted to know his true identity. Alina didn't know how to respond, but then she noticed her crystal shard glowing, a sign that something terrible had happened to Jade and his party. Without hesitation, she rushed to the guild headquarters crystal gate, determined to teleport to the dungeon and save them. However, the guards blocked her path, refusing to let her use it. With no other choice, Alina activated her skill, ready to break through. Back in the dungeon, Jade knew he was going to die, but he refused to fall without a fight. As thoughts of Alina filled his mind, he still wanted to see her one last time. Impressed by Jade's determination, the Dark God smirked and wondered just how many swords Jade could withstand before he fell. Meanwhile, Lo was about to die by the monster and told Lululi to run, but she refused, determined to protect him. Luckily, Alina arrived just in time and struck down the monster with a single blow. She then handed Lo a healing potion, and after he explained the situation to her, she immediately rushed to help Jade, only to find him already dead. A surge of sadness and rage filled her. Just then, a spear flew toward her, but she dodged it effortlessly, which impressed the Dark God. Upon seeing the Dark God, Alina grew furious and quickly summoned her hammer, striking him with a powerful blow. He was stunned to realize that she could use the same skill as him. In response, he summoned swords around her and launched a relentless attack, managing to wound her. Just as she was about to be struck down, a shield appeared out of nowhere, blocking the attack and saving her. Revealing that Jade was still alive, Alina quickly got back on her feet and drove the back of her hammer into the dark god's chest, piercing through and killing him. She then rushed to Jade, who immediately hugged her, overjoyed that she had come to save him. As she handed him a healing potion, the dark god suddenly rose to his feet, his wounds closing as he used the skill he had stolen from Lululai. The dark god smirked, declaring that Alina held the same power as his creators, which meant she couldn't defeat him no matter what. After all, he was the one who had devoured them all. The dark god summoned swords around Jade and Alina, trapping them. Jade believed this was the end for both of them and planned to shield Alina with his own body so she could escape, but she refused. Determined to fight, Alina summoned her weapon and tried to break through, desperately attempting to get close to the dark god. Unfortunately for her, the swords were too fast, cutting her down and leaving her badly injured. The dark god watched, confident in his victory. But to his shock, Alina rose to her feet once more, refusing to die here. She unleashed all her power, moving at lightning speed. Fearing defeat, the dark god used his ultimate skill against her. But it was useless. In an instant, Alina struck him down, leaving only his head and body intact. The dark god smiled and had told Alina that there was more than one dark god in this world. As he tried to say more, Alina swiftly finished him off. Suddenly, the black relic appeared. When they exited the dungeon, they found Lo and Lululai waiting outside, relieved and happy to see that Jade was still alive. Several days had passed, and Alina was back to her usual routine, thanks to the guildmaster covering for her and making sure that her identity as the executioner was not exposed. As for Lululai, whose skills had been stolen, she was able to regain them after the dark god's defeat, and now focused on healing Jade and Lo. That night, while working overtime, Jade approached Alina, offering to help with her tasks, and she gladly accepted. Alina is just about to enjoy her lunch break when an adventurer suddenly rushes up, eager to take a quest. Annoyed, she takes a deep breath, forces a smile, and offers to help. Later, she complains to her coworker, who asks why she didn't just say no. Alina explains that if he had filed a claim, it would have only made more work for her, and she can't let that happen with the Centennial Festival approaching. The festival lasts 3 days, and this year, Alina is determined to go no matter what. After all, for the past 2 years, she has been too busy working overtime and never found the time to attend. Her coworker asks if they're really going to be that busy. Alina's expression turns serious as she explains that during the festival, quests offer clearer rewards than usual due to the special bonus period. When that happens, adventurers will flood in to take quests. She then hands her coworker a book she put together based on her 2 years of experience. It outlines strategies for handling the quest rush, along with a schedule and guide for the festival, so they can make the most of it. Meanwhile, at the Silver Sword Inn, Lululai prepares medicine for Lo and gives it to him. He hesitates, not wanting to drink it, but does so anyway to avoid upsetting her. Later, after work, Alina happily heads to a cake shop to buy some treats. There, she runs into Lululai, who wants the same cake as her. Feeling generous, Alina lets her have it. Grateful, Lululai smiles and says she finally understands why Jade is so in love with her, causing Alina to panic. As they chat, Lululai suddenly thanks Alina for saving them in the dungeon, saying that without her, they all would have died. Alina brushes it off, saying it's no big deal, and suggesting they just enjoy their cake. On her way back, Alina runs into Jade, who thanks her for being friends with Lululai. However, he then tells her how hurt he is that she never visited him even once. Alina, acting like she doesn't care, simply asks him why she would ever do that. At the same time, Lululai got followed by a mysterious guy. The next day, Alina happily cleans the floor, reminding herself that the festival is approaching. Noticing her mood, her coworker asks if she's planning to go on a date during the festival. When she finds out that Alina plans to go alone, she is shocked and feels bad for her, which annoys Alina a little. She then looks at Alina and says she would love to go with her, but unfortunately, she already has a date that day. When she reveals that her date is the Lord Executioner, Alina is stunned, immediately worrying that her coworker might have been deceived by an imposter. Concerned, she asks who this Lord Executioner really is. To her surprise, her coworker pulls out a doll of the Executioner and proudly announces that she plans to go on a date with it. As they talk, a group of adventurers suddenly rushes in, demanding quests. This makes Alina confused since the special bonus period hasn't even started yet. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Rancho Guild training ground, Jade and his party are training with their new member, Sybil, as they face off against a wolf monster. Though Sybil is strong, his overconfidence gets the better of him, and he ends up getting injured. Jade then quickly orders Lululai to heal him. But when Lululai sees Sybil's wound, she freezes, haunted by memories of fallen adventurers in the dungeon. Noticing her distress, Jade calls out to her, snapping her back to reality. Once healed, Sybil recklessly charges back into the fight, furious that he was nearly killed. Ignoring Jade's warnings to stand down, he attacks in a blind rage. The monster, however, manages to knock the sword from his hand. Just as it's about to strike the final blow, Alina arrives in the nick of time, killing the beast with a single shot, shattering the hologram generator in the process. Alina glares at Jade in anger before dragging him away to talk in private. Meanwhile, Sybil, ashamed that he couldn't defeat the monster, quickly runs off to train harder. Lo and Lululi watch him go, wondering if they'll have to find a new member again. In the guild master's office, Alina asks Jade why so many adventurers are suddenly rushing to take quests. The guildmaster and Jade explain that a rumor has been spreading about a secret quest containing a relic that grants a Dia skill. Though they don't know who started the rumor, they promise to do their best to track down the source. Afterward, Jade meets with Lululi and asks why she hesitated to heal Sybil earlier. Not wanting to worry him, Lululai simply says it's because she has never teamed up with a great sword user before. Just then, Lo walks over and hands her a new staff, a gift from him and Jade. It was crafted based on the staff she previously used. Overjoyed, Lululi smiles brightly and thanks them both. That night, the guildmaster, Jade, and his party come to the Adventurers Guild to discuss the rumor, much to Alina's annoyance. She demands to know why they're there. The guildmaster sighs and explains that he had no choice. He doesn't know who might be eavesdropping at the guild headquarters, so he had to discuss it here instead. Jade then tells Alina that there's some good news. According to the intel team, they have roughly pinpointed the source of the rumor, but they still need more time to come up with a plan. He then turns to his party and shares his theory. He believes the person spreading the rumor is trying to revive the new Dark God. Since the Dark God can only be resurrected by devouring human souls, the rumor was likely a trap to deceive adventurers and lure them into the hidden dungeon where they would be sacrificed. After the guildmaster and his party leave, Jade finds himself alone with Alina. He then offers to help with her work, but in exchange, she has to go on a date with him during the festival, even if it's just for a day. Hearing this, Alina is furious, but after a moment of thought, she reluctantly agrees. The next day, Selena, Jade, and his party disguise themselves as novice adventurers to investigate the source of the rumor since it was only being spread among beginners. When they arrived at Mossy Rock Lake, a popular rest spot for adventurers, Jade pointed at the water, hoping to see Alina go for a swim. However, she refused, leaving him disappointed. He couldn't help but imagine how stunning she would look in a swimsuit. Noticing his thoughts, she immediately grabbed him and tossed him into the lake. Meanwhile, Lululai and Lo happily enjoyed their time swimming. At night, they sat around the campfire, chatting, when Lo suddenly started teasing Lululai about how she first joined the party, making her flustered. Just then, a group of adventurers approached them. Noticing this, Alina, Jade, and his party quickly concealed their faces before greeting them. As they talked, the group's leader introduced himself as Heights and asked Jade if he wanted to become stronger. He claimed to know a way to gain immense power instantly, without training. According to him, accepting a secret quest would reveal a hidden dungeon, and completing it would grant a special relic. Hearing this, Jade and his party revealed themselves and surrounded the group, demanding to know where Heights got that information and why he was doing this. Heights was surprised but showed no fear. One of the adventurers suddenly rushed to attack Jade, but before he could do anything, Alina's hammer struck him, knocking him unconscious. Unlike Jade, Alina didn't care about their reasons. She only wanted to kill them for spreading the rumor. Her murderous intent made everyone freeze, even Jade, who desperately tried to stop her. He wanted to capture them alive, but Alina didn't care. Just as she was about to kill Heights, he activated his skill, teleporting himself and his group away in an instant. Jade and his party approached the unconscious man, intending to question him. As soon as he woke up, he immediately recognized Lululi and exposed her past, calling her as a murderer who abandoned her comrades without hesitation. Just as he tried to say more, Alina stepped forward, completely uninterested in his words, and struck him with her hammer without a second thought. Later, Alina's co-worker was shocked to see Jade helping her with her work. Jade simply smiled and explained that he was doing it in exchange for a one-day date with Alina at the festival. This surprised her, but she was happy for Alina. After all, Jade wasn't just good-looking, but also a wealthy adventurer. However, Alina couldn't care less. She told her co-worker that she didn't love Jade at all. The only things that truly made her happy were desserts after a hard day's work and late-night treats before a well-earned day off. Her co-worker sighed in disappointment, wondering what Jade even saw in her. When Alina took a short break, leaving her co-worker alone with Jade, her co-worker told him that Alina was a kind and hard-working person, asking him to continue treating her well. Jade smiled and nodded, reassuring her. Deep down, he was determined to become even stronger, for Alina's sake. Meanwhile, Lululi dreamed of her entire party lying dead, their voices echoing as they called her a murderer. Elsewhere, in the Adventurers Guild's audience hall, the higher-ups questioned the guildmaster about the executioner's identity. However, the guildmaster firmly refused to reveal anything, stating that the executioner only wanted to live a peaceful life. The next day, Jade asked Lo and Lululi to help him with a dangerous special training. On the way, Lululi turned to Lo and asked if he wanted to know why that adventurer had called her a murderer. However, Lo didn't seem to care, shrugging it off and saying that that kind of thing didn't matter to him at all. Still, Lululi insisted on telling him, as if she needed to get it off her chest. She explained that on that fateful day, she and her old party had reached the boss's room for the first time. Overwhelmed with excitement, they got carried away and recklessly challenged the floor boss head-on. One by one, her comrades fell. The black mage and the swordsman were gravely wounded and on the verge of death. At the time, she was still inexperienced with her magic. If she used all the magic power she had left, she could save one of them, but the other would die. Faced with the impossible choice, she hesitated. In the end, she tried to heal both of them at once, but her magic wasn't strong enough. Her half-hearted attempt failed and they both died. That was why the adventurer had called her a murderer. Lo tried to comfort her, saying it wasn't entirely her fault. The tank and attacker also bore responsibility for failing to protect their comrades and defeat the boss. He then turned to Lululi and asked, "If I were a murderer, would you still want to be in the same party as me?" Lululi hesitated for a moment before answering, "There must be a reason behind it, and I would still trust you." Hearing this, Lo smiled and said, "Then I believe in you too." As they arrived at the training ground, they saw Jade collapse from exhaustion after using multiple skills at once, and immediately rushed to help him. Later, as Luglohululi scolded him for overtraining, a girl named Shelly suddenly walked in, jokingly warning Jade that if he kept pushing himself like this, he'd suffer physical damage and might even die from shock. Hearing this only made Lululi more worried. After that, Shelly handed Jade a black object that Jade had retrieved from the Dark God. She explained that this was actually its main body. The reason it appeared black was that it was filled with countless Dia skills. Since the Dark God, Scylla, could only use 3 skills at a time, Shelly believed that the more people he killed, the more Dia skills he could absorb, allowing him to grow even stronger. Jade asked if there was any other information, and Shelly revealed that the one behind the rumors appeared to be a man dressed in black. That night, Alina and Jade successfully finished all their work before the festival. To celebrate, Alina took Jade to a nearby bar. However, after having a few drinks, she got drunk and mistakenly called Jade Shroud, leaving him confused and wondering who Shroud was. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, the guildmaster is surprised when his old friend Jessica unexpectedly visits. She hands him a secret quest disguised as a book. When he asks where she got it, Jessica simply smiles and refuses to answer. After all, information merchants never reveal their sources. Later, the guildmaster instructs his secretary to secure the book in the underground library, on the deepest floor of the guild's labyrinth. On the day of the Centennial Festival, Jade and Alina happily go on a date together. Seeing her excitement, Jade smiles and tells her that he never knew this side of her was so cute, making Alina blush. As they walk through the bustling crowd, Jade notices how packed it is and suggests they hold hands so they don't get separated. At first, Alina refuses, but then she remembers how much effort he put into helping her with her work. With a small sigh, she changes her mind and agrees, making Jade's heart swell with happiness. Meanwhile, in the underground prison, Lululai secretly goes to meet the adventurer, Aiden, only to be startled when Lo follows her out of concern. Still blaming herself for the death of her former party, Lululi wants to talk things out with Aiden. Seeing her pain, Lo gently reassures her that no matter what her past is, she is now a part of their party. He and Jade never saw her as a murderer. As they reach Aiden's prison cell, he looks at Lululi and asks if she brought her new companion to pity him. He then reveals why he did what he did. After losing his party, he desperately wanted to become stronger, believing that his skills would manifest one day. He was convinced he could still be a tank even with only one arm. But everything changed when he heard that Lululai had joined the Silver Sword. The so-called companion killer had awakened Sigurth's skills and even claimed to be an elite adventurer. At that moment, Aiden felt like nothing else mattered. He was willing to do anything to obtain a Dia skill so he could kill Lululi and avenge his fallen comrades. Realizing that talking to Aiden is pointless, Lo quickly takes Lululai and leaves. Even after they're gone, Aiden continues to blame Lululai, calling her a murderer, but deep down, he knows the true murderer is himself. Just then, Heights arrives and greets Aiden, making him wonder why he's there. Smiling, Heights explains that he had business on the deepest floor and took the opportunity to pick Aiden up as well. In a moment, Raikade, his comrade, will create a distraction at the festival, allowing them to use the chaos to escape. At the same time, Rokade disguises himself as a clown, entertaining the crowd. Suddenly, he begins summoning ice, freezing everyone around him and causing chaos at the festival. Alina glares at the clown in fury. Everything she worked so hard for to enjoy this festival is now ruined. Consumed by rage, she summons her weapon and attacks without hesitation. Even as he begs her to stop, she shows no mercy. Back at the underground prison, just as Lo and Lululi are about to leave, they are stopped by Heights. Shocked to see Aiden with him, they demand to know what Heights is planning. Smirking, Heights pulls out the very book the guildmaster had ordered to be hidden. He tells Lo that it contains a secret quest and that he came to retrieve it. As he opens the book, Lo tries to stop him, but it's too late. The quest then activates, revealing its location. After accepting the quest, Heights turns to Lo with a sly grin, inviting them to join the quest too, before using his teleportation skill to escape with his comrades. After defeating the clown, Alina is still saddened that the festival was cancelled. However, since no one was injured and the culprit was caught, Jade informs her that the festival will resume soon, which instantly lifts her spirits. Just then, Lo and Lululi arrive and explain everything to Jade, revealing Heights' plan to revive the Dark God. Without hesitation, Jade decides to head there immediately with his party. He tells Alina to stay behind and enjoy the festival, but she refuses, determined to go with them, fearing that Jade and his party might not make it back alive. As they arrive at the secret quest location, they are surprised to find no body there, until Heights and his comrades suddenly appear before them. Jade, Alina, and his party prepare for battle, but Heights reminds them that killing him here would be pointless. If they die, their souls will be offered as a sacrifice, bringing the Dark God back to life. Despite this, Lo attacks anyway. However, rather than aiming to kill, he uses his ice magic to trap them instead. One of Heights' men then uses his skill, sacrificing his own life to nullify all damage to Heights and Aiden. However, instead of mourning his fallen comrade, Heights bursts into laughter, mocking the skill as utterly worthless. Hearing this, Aiden questions him, reminding Heights that he promised the Dark God would grant them Dia skills. But Heights ignores the question and instead reveals his true purpose is to help the Dark God gain even greater power. It turns out Heights despises this world, questioning why skills even exist in the first place. They are granted at random, leaving everything to fate. If you're lucky, you become a winner in life. If not, you're left to rot in obscurity. Heights once believed his life was over, as his skill was only suited for escaping, useless in battle. But one day, a man in black appeared before him, offering a way to destroy this unfair world through equally unfair means. And to do that, they must revive the Dark God. As Heights speaks, the Dark God suddenly appears behind him, killing him instantly. Everyone is shocked, but their surprise turns to confusion when they realize there are two Dark Gods instead of one. The beings introduce themselves as Vienna and Fina, explaining that while they appear as separate entities, they are actually one. Without warning, they summon a bow and fire an arrow at Jade, simply because they find him the cutest. Fortunately, Alina reacts in time, shattering the arrow mid-air before it can reach Jade, and then swings her hammer at both dark gods. But her attack proves useless as they regenerate almost instantly. Jade realizes that as long as their cores aren't destroyed at the same time, they can regenerate infinitely. He comes up with a plan which Alina agrees to and follows. She then charges towards the Dark God, while Jade moves swiftly, activating his skill on the ground. He notices that using his skill repeatedly doesn't stack its effects. However, if he layers a different skill on top of the previous one, it amplifies the overall effect. His strategy works, his skill is enhanced, and he can now block the Dark God's arrows. With this, he is finally able to get close to the Dark God and stab through her neck, destroying her core. Alina follows up with an attack, ensuring their victory. With the core gone, another god is also defeated. Everyone feels relieved, until Jade suddenly feels a sharp pain in his chest, likely from overusing his skill. Just then, the Dark God reappears, surprised that Jade managed to wound them. However, their shock quickly turns to anger. They cannot accept that a mere human was able to land a hit on them. Enraged, they point their bow at Aiden, who is watching nearby, and fire an arrow, aiming to kill him and absorb his power. Fortunately, Lo arrives just in time, pulling Aiden out of the way and then quickly taking him out of the area. This makes the Dark God, Vienna, even angrier. In a fit of rage, Vienna bites Vienna's neck, triggering their transformation into their final form. In this new form, they manage to shoot Alina in the stomach, causing her to collapse. Worried, Jade quickly takes her to Lululai and asks for her healing magic. Unfortunately for them, the magic has no effect on the wound. Desperate, Jade then asks Lululi to transfer the Sigurth Revive skill from him to Alina. However, even with the transfer, the magic still doesn't work. The Dark God then tells them it is useless to resist. Anyone struck by their arrow will die, even from a slight scratch. This fills Jade with anger, and he immediately rushes towards the Dark God to fight them alone, leaving Lululai to take care of Alina. However, the moment he activates his skill, a sharp pain shoots through his chest and he collapses to the ground. Vienna approaches him, but instead of pointing her arrow at Jade, she aims at Lululi. Desperate to shift Vienna's focus back to himself, Jade provokes her by calling her a failed creation. He explains that both Vienna and Fiona had half of the Dia mark on their faces, but even after merging into one being, the mark remained incomplete. He adds that while they could regenerate, their individual bodies were weak. However, after merging, their magic power increased, but at the cost of their intellect. Because of this, Jade believes they are nothing more than failed prototypes, unfinished versions before a perfected creation could be made. Hearing this infuriates Vienna even more. Enraged, she fires an arrow at him. Jade attempts to use his skill, but suddenly starts coughing up blood. Meanwhile, Lululai feels hopeless as she struggles to heal Alina, believing she is on the verge of death. To her surprise, Alina suddenly wakes up, determined to keep fighting despite her injury. Inspired by Alina's resilience, Lululai stops her and continues healing her. Just then, the wound finally begins to close, filling Lululai with relief. Unfortunately, she suddenly experiences a sharp headache from overusing her healing magic. Despite the pain, she refuses to stop and keeps healing Alina. Once Alina is fully healed, Lululai collapses to the ground, unconscious. At the same time, Lo manages to get Aiden out of the dungeon and then threatens him to never show his face in front of Lululi again. Back at Jade, just as the arrow is about to strike him, a hammer flies through the air and smashes it to pieces. Jade turns toward the source and feels relief upon seeing Alina safe. His strength finally gives out, and he falls to the ground. Seeing this, Alina smiles and tells him to leave the rest to her. The sight of Alina unharmed enrages the Dark God, forcing them to transform once again in rage. However, this time it's different. Alina is going all out. Unleashing her full power, she moves at an incredible speed and manages to destroy the core on their neck. Later, when Lululai wakes up, she is surprised to see Alina, Jade, and Lo waiting for her. Alina thanks her for saving her life, but Lululai quickly denies it. saying that she should be the one thanking Alina. If not for Alina, she would have given up on healing her long ago. She then reveals that she always hated her skill, but now she has started to love it because it allows her to protect those dear to her. That night, Jade and Alina continue their date at the festival. After all, she promised to spend the day with him and they still have half a day left. Alina then hands Jade a lantern with a flower inside and asks him to light it for her. She explains that it's for Shroud, an adventurer who was close to her and died when she was a child. Alina then looks at Jade and tells him not to die no matter what, only to immediately regret it and tell him not to get the wrong idea. Just then, 3 adventurers approach them, thanking Alina for everything she's done for them. They mention that, because of her, they no longer have to wait long at her counter, no matter how crowded it gets. This makes Alina feels both happy and angry at the same time. She then scolds them, asking if they've been lining up at her counter on purpose to make her work overtime, and tells them not to do it again. Afterward, as everyone releases their lanterns into the sky, Alina is taken aback by how lively and cheerful the crowd is, instead of the quiet, reflective atmosphere she expected. Jade notices her surprise and explains that celebrating this way helps the souls ascending to the sky feel less lonely, while also preventing the souls left behind from being weighed down by eternal sadness. As they chat, Lo and Lululi walk over with wide grins and invite Alina to join them for an after-party. Several days have passed, and Alina once again sets out to clear the uncleared dungeon that other adventurers failed to complete in order to earn days off. She plans to use her break to join the newcomer training for guild receptionists, which surprises Jade and his party. They are shocked that she is going through so much effort just to attend the training, but Alina thinks it is a reasonable effort for the sake of clocking out on time. Not long ago, Alina and her co-workers were informed that HR at headquarters had introduced a special solution to reduce overtime hours. This news made Alina happy. She thought the time had finally come to increase the number of receptionists. However, to her disappointment, the so-called solution was that whoever proposed the most efficient business improvement plan would receive a birthday leave. As Alina feels disappointed, she hears from a coworker about a newcomer training program for guild receptionists. The program is led by a legendary receptionist who, at one point, managed to handle an overwhelming number of requests all on her own when 3 new dungeons appeared. Alina believes that if she can learn the secret behind this receptionist's skills, she will never have to work overtime again. Back in the present, Lululai informs Alina that she and her party will be participating as instructors for the demo battle in the newcomer training. This news frustrates Alina, and she warns Jade not to do anything weird while they are there. Jade feels a bit hurt by her reaction, but reassures her that she has nothing to worry about. He promises to behave and hopes to do something that will make Alina like him. The next day, at the guild headquarters, while Alina and the others are being taught about the history of the guild, 3 men watch Alina and find her incredibly cute. Jade, who is nearby, overhears their conversation and gets irritated, but he tries to hold himself back. Next, Alina and the others are taken to the statue of the current guildmaster and his party, where they are taught about their history. At that moment, the guildmaster suddenly appears and freezes time for everyone except Alina. He thanks her for helping defeat the Dark God the other day. However, Alina is uninterested in his gratitude and instead reminds him of the promise he made to increase the number of receptionists. Panicked, the guildmaster assures her that he will take care of it as soon as possible. Before he leaves, he tells Alina that he is counting on her again if the Dark God ever reappears. Alina, indifferent, tells him that there is no way a dark god would appear one after another. Afterward, Alina and the others are taken to watch a demo battle led by Jade and his party. During the battle, Jade takes the opportunity to show off in front of everyone, hoping to impress Alina. Unfortunately for him, while the crowd is amazed by his skills, Alina remains unimpressed. After the demonstration, Jade smiles and introduces himself to everyone. This time, however, he pretends not to know Alina, fearing that acknowledging her might make her angry. Unbeknownst to Jade, instead of feeling relieved, Alina finds herself unexpectedly saddened by his action. Later, they were taken to the training building where they would be staying for the night. One of Alina's co-workers suddenly became scared upon remembering a rumor that the building was haunted. Alina, on the other hand, didn't believe in such things and dismissed it. As they entered their room, there was a sudden knock on the door which startled her co-worker. To their shock, it was actually Lululi, who also seemed frightened by the rumor. It turned out that the higher-ups had assigned Lululai and her party to stay in the same building for the night. Not wanting to be alone, Lululai decided to stay with Alina instead. According to rumor, back when the guild headquarters was still a dungeon, many believed that the building was connected to the afterlife. Since the training building was also part of the dungeon, people speculated that spirits lingered there as well. Even now, some claim to have seen a mysterious figure in a black robe or felt an eerie, unexplainable presence. Noticing that Alina didn't seem scared, Lululai and her co-worker quickly changed the subject to Jade. They suggested that Alina should take the birthday leave and let Jade celebrate her birthday with her. However, Alina immediately refused, stating that she wanted to spend her birthday alone, sleeping and enjoying good food all day. This response shocked both of them. Curious, Alina's coworker asked if she had fought with Jade, mentioning that he had been acting strangely and ignoring her earlier. After learning that Jade was only pretending not to know Alina, her coworker couldn't resist teasing her, pointing out how sad she looked when Jade ignored her. Alina, flustered, tried her best to deny it. Lululai then shifted the conversation, asking about the co-worker's love life. In response, the co-worker pulled out a doll of the executioner and confessed that she was in love with him. This made Lululai realize that Alina's co-worker had no idea who the executioner truly was. Meanwhile, in Lo and Jade's room, Lo tells Jade that there might be a traitor in the guild headquarters. He suspects that Heights and his team couldn't have stolen the secret quest from the underground library on their own. The next day, Alina is excited to learn that the so-called legendary guild receptionist is their instructor today. She eagerly asks her how to solve the issue of receptionists working overtime. To her shock, the instructor responds that the only way to fix it is to stop seeing work as a burden and instead love it, whether awake or asleep, always thinking about work. Hearing this, Alina quickly realizes that the instructor is simply a workaholic. This leaves Alina so dumbfounded that even later, when Jade tries to cheer her up, it has no effect. The next day, while studying, Alina saw Jade outside. He was still trying to act like a stranger to her, which made Alina feel sad, though she couldn't quite understand why. Meanwhile, Jade also felt down, remembering how the higher-ups were disappointed in him and his party for failing to capture the man in black. Fortunately, at that moment, the guildmaster stepped in and convinced them to give Jade and his party a bit more time. Just then, Jade saw the guildmaster standing in front of a statue, honoring his fallen party and daughter. It turned out his entire party had perished, including their healer, who was in fact his daughter, leaving him as the only survivor, and today happened to be the anniversary of her death. The guildmaster then turned to Jade and asked why he was there. Seeing how defeated Jade looked, burdened by the feeling of weakness, the guildmaster reassured Jade not to blame himself. After all, Jade was able to hold his own against the Dark God, which was an incredible feat in itself. After the guildmaster left, his secretary, Feely, suddenly approached Jade and asked where the guildmaster was. She explained that he had told her he was going out for a walk but had not returned. After Jade informed her where he had gone, he asked if she had noticed any changes in the guildmaster lately. This question made Feely suddenly angry, and she demanded to know if Jade suspected the guildmaster of being the man in black. She assured Jade that the guildmaster was not so foolish as to endanger the world. Feely then reflected on how the guildmaster had changed over the years. He was not always the man he was today. In the past, he had been cold, stubborn, and selfish. However, after meeting Lynn, an orphan whom he raised as his daughter, he changed. Raising her had forced him to mature. And now that she was gone, Philly couldn't imagine how much pain he must be feeling. She then considered that, perhaps for Lynn's sake, there might be a possibility that he would. Later, when the class was finally over, Alina's coworker complained about how exhausting it was, even though she had slept through most of it. As they talked, they suddenly got hungry, so her coworker left to find food for both of them. While Alina was alone, a guy approached her, attempting to get close to her, even though she was clearly uncomfortable. Fortunately, Jade arrived just in time to intervene. Seeing Jade, the guy became afraid and immediately left, leaving the two of them alone. Alina then thanked Jade for helping her. However, Jade is still trying to act stranger to her, which is annoying her, and tell him to drop the act because it throw her off and telling him to act like his usual self. Just then, Alina's coworker returned with the food and was surprised to see Jade there. She mentioned a rumor about a man in black being spotted in the training hall, which caught Jade's attention. He then planned to stay there for tonight, curious to see for himself. As they were talking, they overheard a group of nearby adventurers chatting about a newly discovered dungeon. This news made Alina and her coworker start to worry. Unfortunately, their worry turned out to be justified, because that night they were overwhelmed with stacks of paperwork related to unprocessed quest applications. Knowing that once training ended, even more chaos awaited, Alina and her coworker were determined to finish it all that night. In a serious attempt to keep ghosts away, her coworker put a little bit of salt on their table, saying it would protect them from evil spirits. She then looked at Alina seriously and said, "No matter what, don't fall asleep before me." Meanwhile, in the research hall at Guild headquarters, Shelley was examining the Dark God's relic when she discovered something important. But before she could reveal it, the man in black appeared, knocked her unconscious, and took the relic. At the same time, over at the training hall, Jade was pushing himself hard, trying to get even stronger. But he suddenly experienced a sharp pain in his head from overtraining. Fortunately, his party was nearby and told him to take a break. As they rested, the group began discussing the man in black. Although Lululai didn't want to believe it, Jade and Lo couldn't help but suspect that the guildmaster might actually be the man in black. Back in Alina's room, she ended up falling asleep, causing her coworker to panic and try to wake her. Just then, the door creaked open and a ghostly figure slowly entered the room. Terrified, her coworker grabbed some salt and threw it at the spirit, but it had no effect. Luckily, Alina woke up just in time, but instead of being scared, she got angry, thinking the ghost was getting in the way of her work. Without hesitation, she punched it as hard as she could, sending the ghost flying. A white shadow burst out of the figure, revealing that it was actually a man who had been possessed by the spirit. Alina and her coworker then quickly rushed to inform Jade about what happened. Jade explained that the man was probably possessed by a ghost monster. As they walked, her coworker noticed a man in black watching them from a distance. Without hesitation, Jade, his party, and Alina chased after him, leaving her coworker behind. However, to their surprise, they ended up falling right into the man in black's trap. If you come this far, please consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thank you.